My role in GASI currently is as president-elect, and the role of president-elect is to assist the president in all of the arrangements necessary for the upcoming conference and in related presidential duties, such as general contributions to policy issues, such as the nature of the publications, and so on. But beyond that, my greater role is to prepare for the following conference, which is a conference in which I'll be kind of formally responsible more centrally for the organization. So really, it's an assisting role. Right now, I'm assisting for Joyce a day and learning a lot from her. The answer is a little bit multifold. One reason is simply the intersection of GASI's interests and mission with my own scholarly interests. Within the field of English, I'm very interested in writing, the teaching of writing, and the complications of rhetoric. And what are the complications of rhetoric? The reason that people have trouble writing and communicating in non-fictive genres is because of the differences between us. And some of those differences are cultural. We can define culture according to notions such as gender, generation, and nation, among other cultural issues. So I've become very interested in intercultural rhetoric and transnational rhetoric. That's a very important part of the field of English right now because of the challenges we have to come together as a world and to understand each other globally when it comes to big issues such as combating the effects of climate change, dealing with the global inequities we see economically, working on matters of food insecurity. There are so many problems that cross borders and cross cultures. And if we can't discuss those in ways that help us to understand each other, we are much the worse as a human race altogether. So those interests, the way people communicate or miscommunicate, and how we can learn to communicate better, are central to what I do as a teacher of writing on the small scale. But it's also the question of what is Joseph Biden going to say to Xi Jinping when he talks about the threats that China is making to Taiwan without setting off an international incident? Now, there's obviously the problem of language and translation, but there's more than that. Even in the same language, we have those difficulties. So all of that is my field. And GASI, the Global Awareness Society International, is about looking at all kinds of issues from a global perspective so we can understand each other in whatever disciplinary fields we may find ourselves. So I hope that's a sufficient answer. That's kept me connected with this organization. Also, to be honest, I early on got to know a few people in the organization who are, I think, wonderful individuals who have the kinds of values that I hope should prevail in academia. To me, GASI is a place where people with different disciplinary perspectives and different cultural perspectives and national perspectives can come together to open their perspectives, to understand from viewpoints that are different from those in which we normally live on a daily basis. And GASI allows us to do that on a scholarly level, but also on an experiential level. What GASI does is it allows us to think about any issue that's important to us in our field. And it means to me that disciplinary, let's say, left brain kind of thinking that we often do within academia, there's maybe too much privilege in academia, is connected to and united with real experience of real people and real places. The kind of thing we can't always get by Zoom, although we try to, of course, do it as well as we can. When I'm walking down a street in Budapest or in Salamanca or in Heredia, Costa Rica, there are things I'm learning that I can't learn from any book, from any article, from the most prestigious journal in any field. At the same time, I'm going to learn about some fields I know nothing about. So if if you are someone who, like myself, really is interested in everything, and the older I get, the more fields I discover I wish I were an expert in, and I wish that I had studied in on a scholarly, even doctoral level. GOSI means to me a place where I can learn a little bit, I can participate with others. It is scholarly without being pretentious or snobby, which I like a lot also. And it connects to uh, international experience. It makes us all intellectual travelers and not mere tourists. And that's what it means to me. Well, I'm involved in an international scholarly organization called Writing Research Across Borders that does some of the kind of work that GOSI does, but only within fields connected with writing and communication. And so I'm very glad to be involved in that organization. And I had a wonderful conference with those folks in Paris a few years back. And I'll always remember how much I enjoyed that. On the other hand, I was only still coloring within the lines of my own discipline. I wasn't crossing over and expanding my mind into how global issues affect people who have different concerns in terms of their disciplinary interests in their research. So I guess GOSI has the special advantage of um, interdisciplinarity and intercultural, international, global perspective. A GOSI conference is an experience in which there is uh, engagement with scholarly questions that sometimes will push us intellectually beyond what we know or what we are comfortable to know, but is also very welcoming for anyone to ask questions. I can be a neophyte in a given field. I can be an undergraduate student and sit in on a high level conversation on an issue in political science or international affairs or global issues in an area of science. And if I don't know much about it, I can ask questions and I'll be answered with respect. I'll be welcomed to that conference. So there's serious thinking going on, but people don't have to have serious faces and nobody is testing one another or showing one another up. One thing I love about GOSI is that in the same session, there could be a much published author from a university on another continent who is a foremost individual in a field giving a talk about an issue. And then on a similar issue, there could be even an undergraduate student who's able to go to the conference because of the financial support that GOSI provides for such students, who's giving a new perspective and speaking maybe from a more elementary position, but is asking questions that can be addressed by some of the best minds in the field that happen to be gathered there. So there's, I guess, an ecumenical, a welcoming, a wide range of discussion. And this discussion happens in hotel rooms. It also happens at little bars and cafes down the street at midnight. And it's a way to live some of the ideas that we care about, both in a formal academic context and also just because you're hanging out and eating delicious, interesting food and talking with people with wonderful accents and making that a part of your life and not just a part of something that's an assignment. So I think the conference is a place where differences can come together and emerge with new knowledge. Really, a university should be valuing more than anything else the creation of new knowledge and new perspectives. And we don't get that only within the usual four walls where we live. We're only going to get new perspectives and new knowledge if we cross some boundaries. if we entertain some new ideas. And the structure of GOSI as a conference allows that more than most conferences. GOSI conferences are different for a couple of reasons. One is that they're very welcoming to new scholars and those who are just learning the vocabulary of a given field. We are selective, and we make sure that proposals that people suggest, where they might want to give a presentation, are grouped with other proposals that will make a meeting of minds and an intersection of ideas. But we allow a lot of voices into the room, many more than most conferences. And when we do that, and this is something that I'm most proud of about GOSI, and the reason that I dedicate myself to GOSI more than to most organizations, we make a special effort to involve undergraduate and graduate students and even make sure that they can afford it. We have some organizations in some of our disciplines where, say, new PhDs or people who are new professors sometimes can get one or two awards that may allow them to attend a conference and advance their research, usually with a very competitive context where many people have to leave empty-handed. GOSI, on the other hand, because of the wisdom and the generosity of the founders more than anything else, has always worked into its structure funding for undergraduate and graduate students who can come to the conference and don't have to worry too much about the funding involved. When GOSI met in Marrakech, Morocco in 2019, in May of 2019, I was able to bring 14 students from my institution, most of whom were of underrepresented minority status. And especially, they were the kind of folks who are underrepresented when it comes to scholarly conferences and international travel and study abroad. And with a combination of funds from my institution and from GOSI, the average cost they paid was 20% of the entire cost, and many of the students paid nothing for their travel, for their food, for staying in hotel, for taking a week traversing the beautiful country of Morocco. And that's very important because not only were those students able to see what it's like to be a scholar when they might not ever seen that before. A lot of them, like me, are first generation college students. A lot of them might never have had a conversation with a professor that wasn't simply a little bit of time after class. But instead we had students going to Morocco, a Muslim country, during Ramadan, talking with local folks, taking camels into the Sahara Desert, and standing under the stars, talking with professors about the ideas that were central to their interests and to their dreams. And that is way beyond the support for the scholars of the future. That's way beyond what any other organization I know provides. The first thing I want to say is expect to have fun. You know, often when we prepare to go to a conference, especially if we're going to be in a speaking role, there can be a lot of nervousness about that. We want to make sure that we're well prepared. Sometimes we're working to the last minute to get everything ready so that we can have all our research in order and we can make a talk that makes sense. We want to anticipate what the questions might be so we'll have good answers. What I want to say is expect to have fun. Expect to see people laughing and smiling. And sometimes people will be arguing too, but they'll be arguing. They'll be arguing with passion and with their hearts and with their minds as well. So expect to have fun and expect that everybody is going to be respected. I've mentioned a couple of memories that I've liked. Seeing the discussions happening in Morocco in the Sahara after we spent some hours riding camels into the desert, and seeing the discussions happening under the stars late into the night. That's a favorite moment. Another favorite moment would be when I saw those two undergraduate scholars taking on a senior scholar respectfully but firmly, using all of their mind and all of their youthful passion to talk about their own consciousness that had been slammed a little bit by that professor, their own global understanding. That was a favorite moment. But I'll tell you a favorite moment that occurs at each conference that I really like, and you'll see this on the GOSSI website on some of the pages. It's when there's a moment at the culminating banquet that's a part of every conference where all of the young scholars, the students who've gotten scholarship funding to go there, line up to have their picture taken with some of the officers of the group. And that's always a beautiful, beautiful moment. That's always a great moment I like, because all of us who are not of academic backgrounds, but somehow found ourselves loving the idea of, of thinking and teaching and researching for a living on some ideas that we found to be worth our time, worth even years of our time. We all had some moment when the epiphany happened. And some of those students are having that happen right then. So I love that, and I also love the fact that we always incorporate service projects into what we do. And it's a way to connect with people on the terms that they think are going to help their culture, so that we can participate a little bit and cross the boundaries of our common efforts to solve problems. So some of the service projects have been quite wonderful. One I loved was in Costa Rica for a service project. We got together to watch the cultural presentations of a group of citizens who had significant intellectual disabilities. And it turned into not just them showing us some of their cultural dances and playing music that was significant to folk culture in Costa Rica. We all ended up dancing together for hours. And we worked up a lot of sweat and a lot of smiles, and it was just a blast. So that's maybe a moment where we were supposedly helping them by giving them an audience for some of the work they've been doing. And instead, we all ended up having just a great time. What I'd like to see GOSSI do in the future is to continue on the path that I think it is set to take at this point. Really, in the last 5 years or so, we've gotten much more involved with engaging undergraduate and graduate students in the organization. I would like to see GOSSI supporting those students preparing to do research in their fields on numerous campuses, so that when they get to the conference, it'll be a continuation and not just a beginning of some of the work they do that's connected to global awareness in their disciplines. I would like to make sure that we have increased funding so that we don't worry about the possible limits on the number of students we can fund to travel, especially those students who are of particular need, who are less represented when it comes to study abroad courses, because they're not our most well-heeled students. I want to see more students of color. I want to see more students from more different institutions. And I'd like to see just more involvement from scholars generally, from more countries and from more institutions. That's the main thing. I think we're going in that direction, and I just want to continue along that direction as much as we can travel it.